What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the Wrk To Create podcast. I'm your host, Colton Bacher, and this is season 1, episode 10. I've got a bone to pick with the music industry. This week, we're exploring why I believe the industry and a lot of the major players in the industry have abandoned innovation for profit. My passion is music, and without music, I would not be here right now talking to you guys. I've also experienced now hundreds of moments that music has impacted people's lives in a way that nothing else can. From celebration to heartbreak to anger to love and to all the other emotions and circumstances surrounding the human experience, through music, we are connected. This isn't just a rant about TikTok or a nostalgia trip for how it used to be. This is about how industry incentives are shaping the music we hear, the artists we support, and the future we're building, whether we realize it or not. So if you've ever thought, why does everything sound the same? Or why don't more great artists break through? You're not crazy, and today we're going to talk about why. Let's get into it. All right, episode 10, guys. I just wanted to take a really quick moment to just say thank you. This is a pretty crazy milestone. I know our goal for this season is 25, but 10 is a pretty wild number. And I think we've covered a lot of really interesting topics, and I look forward to exploring even more topics with you guys. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Appreciate all the support and the love, and I hope you're finding value in these episodes. That's the whole point, to help you guys. So, all right, little precursor here. Why are we talking about this? So back in 2023, I for some reason was really fed up, and I wrote this quote in my notes. And this since 2023, I've been wanting to make a video on this, or at least talk about the topic publicly. And yeah, I'll just read the quote. The music industry has abandoned innovation for profit. There are people and companies who are not interested in the music, the product of the industry, and are interested / got involved purely for the money, exploiting the product. The product is the music, thus diluting the meaning and the worth of the product, and encouraging a culture that feeds their needs over the need for an artist to express themselves in a way that connects and brings other human beings together. I know, it's deep, and this is a super deep episode. Yeah, for whatever reason, I was really triggered and wrote this down, and I still think this rings true. And yeah, like when I began my career in music, I was quickly introduced to a lot of people that did not see music as a means for human connection, and instead they would use and leverage music for personal gain. Since that realization, I've spent every waking moment of my career trying to help people see, feel, and understand the power of music, and thus why it's so important that we protect this form of art from commercial greed while promoting a healthy and thriving creative culture that connects people worldwide through love and freedom of expression. Might as well be a mission statement, right? As you can tell through even my funky wording, I'm passionate about this. And I see myself as a music industry advocate, someone who has a relatively positive outlook on the industry. And like, I think that so much good can come from a conversation like this. And now that I'm thinking about it too, I'm pretty sure recently Jelly Roll, I think it was at, I can't remember what country music festival it was, but he was just basically echoing what I was talking about in terms of just like using music to heal and to bring people together and to connect people and to express love. And yeah, I just think there is no other, like, music is the most powerful form of art in my opinion. It's wild beyond, like, forget movies, forget all that other stuff. Like, music is loved universally around the world and expressed around the world. And I just think it's so special. It's also like what makes us human, if you think about it. Like, there is, like, yeah, sure, like some birds sing, but we only call it singing because, like, we sing and we create music. So I think humans, like, music is pretty unique to us. I think that's really special. So let's dive into this. And we got a bunch of little topics that I'm going to dive into here, and they are going to kind of paint you a picture of what I'm talking about. And then we're going to talk about, things that we can do to kind of counter this. And we're going to look at some examples of artists and labels and all of those types of things that are moving in the right direction. It's not all doom and gloom, I promise. All right. So we're going to start with playlists. I know. Interesting, right? But why does every playlist sound the same? I know this is kind of a blanket statement, but if every song on your Discover Weekly, so like in your Spotify, sounds like it came from the same session, you're not just hearing things. So there's this study analyzing 50 years of popular music, and the researchers called it a progressive homogenization of the musical discourse. So they called it a progressive homogenization of the musical discourse. Modern pop songs are using fewer pitch transitions, simpler chord progressions, and less instrumental diversity than music in the past. So this was done in 2012, and essentially they were just saying how, like, over time, music has become less experimental, less diverse in these, like, technical terms in terms of pitch transitions, chord progressions, instrument diversity. So I found that super, super interesting. Songs today are also mastered louder. It's a phenomenon known as the loudness war. So it's scientifically proven that humans perceive louder music as better, and when we make something louder, it actually flattens the dynamics. And essentially the music industry has kind of made this a thing, and so now we've kind of traded some of the emotional elements of music in exchange for grabbing people's attention. So this is just like one little example in which we're kind of moving in a weird direction here in music. And then this is from John Harris at The Guardian. He says, songs once full of power and emotion get recontextualized and washed of their meaning. And to give you some context on this quote, what he's talking about is playlists. A lot of times, like, okay, so Spotify's number one goal when you click in, into the app and you hit a play on a song, is to keep you inside the app listening to music for as long as possible. And so what John Harris is hinting at is that a lot of these playlist curators are making these playlists, like, as easy to listen to and as, like, what's the word? Kind of like void of conflict and void of, like, extreme emotions, because the vast majority, and we'll get into it, but the vast majority of listeners they care, like, they are attracted to music that doesn't like force them to think. It's easy listening. So what happens is when a really powerful and emotional song, a song that has the power to, influence someone's life, you know, like all the reasons we've talked about why music is amazing. When one of those songs gets put in a playlist surrounded by a bunch of easy listening songs, it hurts and almost demeans the potential influence of that one song. So that's kind of where he's coming from, and I can see why he would say that. That does make sense to me, where you just got a bunch of kind of middle of the road generic songs, and nothing wrong with that because a lot of people love that. But then, yeah, one really powerful song that has so much potential gets tossed in there, but then it gets overlooked as a result. So really interesting. And so when we're talking about playlists, it's not always an aesthetic choice. It's a strategy, a response to what the system rewards. So let's talk about the algorithm. In the algorithm era, attention is currency, and that changes the kind of art that gets made. For example, why are songs getting shorter? Because the algorithm doesn't care about your story, it cares about your skip rate. Like we talked about, the longer that you are in Spotify, the better for them. And so their number one goal is to optimize for keeping you there as long as possible. So streaming services like Spotify pay per stream, not per minute. So artists realized that a 2-minute song earns the same as a 5-minute song. So between 2013 and 2018, the average Billboard Hot 100 hit shrank by 20 seconds. That's pretty wild. That we're seeing, even just in like a 5-year span, the average length of a song has shrank by 20 seconds. That's pretty wild. I often am listening to music and I'm like, dang, why is this so short? Like, I really enjoy this song, So that's definitely like a bummer. And I don't think that way of thinking, is a healthy part of this industry. Here's another example. So Halsey, she went viral on TikTok, but not for one of her songs. This was the quote: "They are doing this to every artist these days. I just want to release music, man." And she was responding in 2022 to her label's refusal to release a single without a viral TikTok moment. That's insane, right? Pretty wild, man. And then I have another note here, kind of while we're in the algorithm side of things. So listeners, so this is like kind of what the algorithms are doing, is listeners are being trained to half listen. So when you're listening to a bunch of music that doesn't necessarily have a really large like emotional connection, or like it's easy to listen to, it's not really like forcing you to think, it's just good vibes, like nothing else. That is the type of music that is prioritized again and again and again. So once there's kind of the meaning of the music is overlooked to a degree, that's when we don't necessarily tune in completely, and now we're half listening. But that is the complete opposite of what artists want to do. Artists are trained to cater, and they want to provide an experience and create a relatable experience where you feel like you've gone through the same thing, or you feel like you're living that moment right now. And so that's how you can kind of see that, like the algorithm and the artistry are kind of butting heads, and it's like water and oil. It doesn't mix. It's really odd. So If artists are forced to chase streams and trends to get their song release, what does this say about the system behind them? Here we go, ladies and gents. All right, the industry bets on what already works. Labels aren't looking for the next groundbreaking artist. They're looking for the next safe bet. The big three record labels, in case you aren't aware, we have Universal, Sony, and Warner. They control anywhere from 65 to 75% of the global music market. These companies are accountable to shareholders and not the artists. Their A&R teams aren't encouraged to take risks. They're encouraged to chase trends. That's what's good for business. And even Jimmy Levine, the co-founder of Interscope Records, was reflecting on how commercial radio narrowed what type of artists could break through. And he said, if Nirvana came out today, they would have a hard time getting on the radio, which is a wild statement if you know who Nirvana is. And I know that's kind of old school, and maybe a lot of you listening don't necessarily listen to that music, but there's also a really good chance that you do. And we'll circle back to that thought here in a little bit. But like I've said before, generic music gets more streams, so the system makes more generic music. And then this goes back to the artists, right? Like the artists are trying to make a living creating this music. And well, one observation could be, oh, well, if the artists are making generic music, then they're probably being lazy. And I would say that's not the case at all. They're actually just adapting to the system that they have to work within to survive. That's it. That's what they're doing. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. It's kind of like the sacrifice for art just to like make sure you can pay your bills. It's a pretty wild concept and position to be in, I think, as an artist. So this brings us to who gets paid and who doesn't. We got the artist doesn't own the art anymore. So how does the person making the music end up with the smallest slice of the pie? I'm sure you've heard about this before, but artists constantly complaining about how they'd get basically no money for streams. A 2019 Citigroup analysis revealed that musicians in the United States receive only 12% of the revenue their work has generated. That was from The Guardian. The rest of the money goes to labels, platforms, publishers, and a bunch of middlemen. A bunch of them. All right. And most major label contracts actually demand ownership of masters, control over branding and creative direction, and tight output schedules. So if an artist is going to take this direction, they often have to trade control for exposure. And they pay for it both in money and creative voice. So, you're going to get seen, you're going to get heard by, millions of people, but they may not be hearing the true version of that artist because of all the cooks in the kitchen. And so just to kind of like paint a picture of like how long this has been going on, and the music industry has actually gone through some like extremely big changes since then, since like way back when I'm about to talk about. So I'm going to talk about Prince here, and he has a really interesting quote. But then we're going to go to the future, and it's kind of the same sentiment here. So Prince, this is a quote from Prince. The major labels don't care about the artist's future. They just want to exploit the current moment, which is wild for him to say, because even back then, there wasn't really social media. It was mostly news outlets and publications. Things were quite a bit slower in terms of the way, information traveled. But then in 2022, we have Billie Eilish. The industry makes you feel like you have to conform to their idea of success. So it's right along those same lines of just like artists being in a position where they can reach a lot of people, but they still don't feel like their voice is their true voice is being heard. And like, I know a lot of you like know what I'm talking about, and I know this is like a little bit repetitive probably, based on, a lot of our listeners here are in the music industry, so they're very aware of what's going on. But let's not lose hope. Let's touch on this more in a little bit. Okay, so we're going to circle back to this idea. What's crazy is that it's almost like subconsciously we can tell that the music being made right now isn't coming from the purest place. So this is pretty wild. Remember I said like a lot of you may not know who Nirvana is, but there's also a really good chance that you do, because in 2023 it was found that 70% of all music consumption in the United States was catalog music. So old music is beating new music. And catalog music is just like any song that is over 18 months old. So instead of investing in new voices, the industry leans on reissues, box sets, and sync licensing. Why? Because it's safe money. And that's pushing discovery out of the equation. And this is a music historian. This is a quote from The Atlantic in 2022. He said, "It's a repudiation of the pop culture industry." I probably should have looked up what repudiation of the pop culture industry, like repudiation, that word. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I'm assuming that's along the lines of deterioration, or even just like repetition. I don't know. Sorry about that, guys. Look it up. Then you'll know what he meant. Dang. All right. Well, but to further this point, let's talk about the Grammys. The Grammys over the years have definitely consistently lost cultural relevance. I think also we have Live Nation. Live Nation has been doubling down on legacy acts. So for festival headlines, it's for like festival headliners, it's the same acts from a decade ago. And even streaming platforms are quietly prioritizing familiarity over novelty. So like, it's kind of this really interesting trend where I think when I was doing research, I heard it was called like the nostalgia industry or something like that, where they were just referring to this entire part of the music industry where it's just like the kind of just putting old songs on repeat, which is not a bad thing, I don't believe at all. But remember at the beginning of this section, I said it's almost like we subconsciously can feel that the older music was coming from a more pure place. Now, the Prince quote kind of contradicts that, but I think we're all feeling like there is some sort of soul missing from music right now. Especially new music. And so, like, for example, the same thing is happening in film right now. The film industry, no one wants to go, like, they're, like, okay, I gotta be careful here, but I don't go, like, I haven't gone to the movies in a couple weeks, and I have, like, a AMC A-list membership, and, like, obviously, if I want to see a movie and I think it looks good, I'm gonna go. But I just haven't gone in like the last month plus because there's just not been anything good coming out. And I've found that over the last year, I've had multiple times where I'm just like, there's nothing good out right now. And I think a lot of other people are feeling that same way. And I think that's kind of part of all the panic that's going on in the industry. A lot of people don't have work and stuff. And I think it's just because we've gotten stuck in this, like, just reissue. It's like, I I don't even know. Like, I'm not gonna go after like a specific, you know, like Marvel or anyone that has like done just a billion movies of the same characters and the same plot line. Uh, no hardcore fans, please don't come at me. But yeah, we just keep doing like the same things over and over again because it's a safe bet instead of investing our time and money into new directors, new ways of thinking, new stories, ways of creating film. Like, and I have written here, the soul of art is lost when revenue becomes the filter for success. I mean, that's, capitalism at its finest right there. That's like the filter. Will this make us more money? Is it guaranteed to make us more money? Is there an ROI? It's that way of thinking that I think is the result of a deterioration of an industry, multiple industries, film, music, etc. So where is the music with soul in today's world? Is it still being made? I believe it is, and it's not just coming from the places you'd expect or not expect. That didn't make any sense. We are live though. We are live. This is uncut, so appreciate you sticking through all of these funny little quirks in my writing. I don't know what's going on right now, but all right. Okay. So where is this new music? That's what we're trying to get at. Is where is the new music that we do believe is pushing the industry forward, that is telling good stories, that is bringing people together? There is still original and innovative music being created. The great thing though is that you don't need a label to drop an album anymore. Just a vision and a Wi-Fi connection. So indie labels and DIY platforms like Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and YouTube give artists complete creative control. They don't need label approval or an advance to build an audience. They just need to be good and consistent. If you put out content and you put out music that's good on a consistent basis, you will find your audience, you will grow, and you will have the opportunity to make a career out of it. And like there's a overall sentiment that there's never been a better time to be a music fan, and I would 100% agree. I absolutely agree. And here's some examples of like artists breaking away from this label distribution structure that the industry is so famous for. We have artists like Frank Ocean, who exited major deals to retain independence. Blonde was self-released after he fulfilled his Def Jam contract. Chance the Rapper won a Grammy with no label by releasing Coloring Book for free. Even more relevant artist, he's a perfect example, is Connor Price. He had utilized TikTok to build an empire of 9.7 million monthly listeners on Spotify as of 2025. And I've kind of been following him as he's been growing, and it's so wild because I remember when he had his first couple of viral TikToks and kind of came out of nowhere, and now he's at 9.7 million. Like most artists on labels, are barely doing that. So it's pretty wild. And every day it's becoming more and more possible for artists who are willing to do what it takes to make it to the surface and not just survive, but thrive. Right now, the industry views artists like Connor Price as outliers, outsiders, but they are quickly becoming major players, and they have proven that they can be successful while being independent and prioritizing their art. I think that's further is proof that has never been a better time to be a music fan, because anyone can come from anywhere in the world and create a community that is just a fan of the art. And I think that's just so powerful. So what about the system itself? The traditional system, can it evolve, or has it gone too far? Can the industry be fixed? Not everyone inside the machine, though, wants to keep it the way that it is running. So there are some major label execs that are starting to respond, although slowly, ever so slowly. So after public backlash, like Halsey's viral TikTok post, anonymous insiders, which is hilarious to me, told media outlets that labels were reevaluating how they work with artists on social media. That was Time Magazine, 2022. Okay, that's good. It's good. We're seeing some movement, and this is just one example. It's also worth noting that, like, despite all of the fingers that we've been pointing at the traditional system, I will say, and it is worth noting, that not all mainstream success is antithetical to innovation. There are instances where industry players and major artists have bucked the trends and been rewarded. So a little bit of an older example is that the landmark album To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar in 2015, which was released on a major label, Interscope, was sonically and lyrically adventurous. It was a project infusing jazz, funk, and spoken word, far from a cookie-cutter rap album. And it achieved both critical and commercial success, even winning a Pulitzer Prize for music. That's 2015. And then I wanted to also just, like, we got to touch on some newer artists that are continually reinventing themselves. So for example, we have Tyler, the Creator, with Columbia Records. He's got his new album, Chromacopia. Tyler, I swear, every single album reinvents himself and continually does well. His fan base loves every time he kind of comes out with something new. At first, I think when Tyler first got on the scene, everyone loved his, like, very aggressive kind of more of an aggressive traditional rap flow. And now he's gone way the other direction in terms of production and all of the progressions and the chords and all of that stuff. I think he's a true scholar of, like, music. He's just constantly, like, learning, and you can tell he's passionate about the projects that he comes out with. And I think he's just a great example. Also, Lil Yachty. Holy cow. The last couple albums he's put out as well have been vastly different. I don't even know if you can, like, classify him, like, some of those last couple albums as necessarily rap albums. They're more on the pop side. And this is Motown and Republic Records. Some more giants. And then we have MGK. I know he's he's kind of controversial. You either love him or hate him. But I've been following his journey. And my goodness, dude, he's with Interscope. His growth as a person and in his music has been really cool. I admire and respect the way that he moves in the industry, the way he prioritizes his family over work, things like that. I think, and then on top of it, pushing boundaries in terms of, he was breaking out of the rap and, like, hip hop industry and kind of blending that with rock and alternative and punk. And yeah, he's about to come out with a new album. I'm super excited to listen to that. Not really sure what direction he's going to go with it, but I'm excited to find out. And then there are some new industry models surfacing now, which is more just like hope for the industry. We have artist service companies like AWAL and United Masters that help distribute and promote music without demanding ownership. Excuse me. We talked about how just, like, major labels often want a lot of creative control, but now we have companies that understand that some artists, like, will not make that sacrifice, and I think that is a perfect market for them, is to work with one of these companies. Then we have music advocacy groups like the Artists' Rights Alliance and the Union of Musicians and Allied Workers, who push for fairer streaming royalties and more transparency. That's all we want, is just fair streaming royalties and more transparency. As a fan of music, and also I'm sure the artists that are making the music would love that. So yes, the industry is pretty broken, but it's not unfixable. And the question really isn't, can we fix it? But it's, do we care enough to try? That's all. Is like, as we go through our day to day and we take on whatever role it is that we are taking on in the industry, how are we contributing? How are we standing up for the art? How are we standing up for the culture? Are we promoting a healthy, collaborative connection in the industry? Or are we being divisive and finding ways to take advantage of the listeners or the artists themselves? And let's not confuse like strategy. Like, you can still have a strategy that is like meant to attract listeners and to get people to listen and to care about what you're doing, but we can do it in a way that isn't detrimental. I'm gonna leave it there, and I got just one final challenge for you, one final question, two actually. Next time you scroll Spotify or TikTok, ask yourself, am I listening to this because I love it, or because it has been handed to me? And then this next question: what kind of industry do you want to support? One that rewards artistry, or one that rewards virality? Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Just food for thought. I just want you guys to sit with all this information. This is not me taking sides. This is not me pointing fingers, saying I have all the answers. Nothing like that. This is purely me being really passionate about an industry and about a form of art that has quite literally saved my life. And the least I can do is to just find ways to make sure that this art can reach other people and hopefully make the same impact it had on me. That's all. Okay. Next week, we're talking about travel tips. Yes, as a traveling festival and live event videographer, I have a lot of routines and gear that I use to make my life easier while on the road. And I'll be breaking down all of that for you. This has been the Wrk To Create podcast. If you haven't yet, check out my newsletter, A Work in Progress. Not only will I provide the most valuable info from each episode, but you get special perks related to products and announcements. My subs get a say in what assets I make, free asset packs, and early access to new releases. I've begun the process of creating my music industry sound pack, so if you want to stay up to date about this, subbing to the newsletter is how you do that. If you found what you heard today valuable, even just a little, please consider liking, subscribing, following, commenting, and even leaving a review on your podcast app of choice. It helps this podcast to get discovered, and hopefully, as a result, we can help more people. Your support means the world. Wrk To Create, Wrk To Inspire, and I'll see you next time. I'm on a roll like a jalopy with the brakes cut. I done came up. Back then I had to